show the middle school kids at one point.
Yeah, no, it's the whole collection that we're looking for in the metal case. We don't know where it is. So I'm hoping somebody does. I'm hoping out of this one. The email went to a lot of people, but they're hoping that people that didn't get the email as well. And so we'll see. They're around somewhere.
Yeah. I didn't know Norris that young. You know what, Thanksgiving, my daughter-in-law came out for a day and a half and helped me out. I was going to be another 8% of your But I've been doing a lot of work. So I'm getting lots of She started last summer. I did it for a couple of years now. So that we could both have some time practicing. Well, I think so. But I didn't know we were probably
I live 15 miles east of here. That's kind of a drive.
Yeah, well, it's a mile.
Ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who are not aware, we are taking a little bit of time at the beginning of what is definitely going to be a great show here today to engage in a short memorial for the gentleman who turns out is my father and my brother's father. My name is Norris Hooton. I'm Norris Hooton. Could we? Oh, okay.
They want to see you.
Hi, I'm me. The guy that looks sort of like that guy. We're doing a brief memorial for Norris here. I have a few things that I would like to say, some slides, hopefully some things that you may or may not have known about our father. And my brother will come up and say some things as well. This is Eric Hooton. And we appreciate your tolerance of this and appreciate you being here for this. And I want to say right now that we will be here for the show as well. I'm a musician as well. My father, of course, played for 80 years. And so we're very interested in this. And then after the show, my brother and I will still be here if anybody wants to mingle a little bit, share stories about my father or anything like that. So thank you again for being here, and thank you for your patience here and your attention. Norris, as many people may or may not know, was born in Chicago in 1930, October 9th. He passed away only about 2.5 weeks ago, and at that point had played music for 80 years, as I mentioned. When he was still in his elementary years, they moved to New Carlisle, Indiana. My grandfather, his father, Fay was a draftsman at a company called Bendix that did aircraft parts and brakes and things like that, and also a gentleman farmer. They had 100 acres outside of New Carlisle. And my father's statement about his upbringing was always that he had an unremarkable but wonderful childhood on the farm. My brother and I remember the farm quite a bit. We got in a lot of trouble there over the years. And we never knew who we were going to be in trouble with, my grandfather or my father or both of them. And when it was both of them, you didn't want to be there. He was the oldest of 5 siblings. He had 3 brothers and a sister. And they were all very close, somewhat scattered in age, but it was a pretty traditional, rural type of an upbringing. There was a lot of family closeness. We remember going to events, family gatherings at the farm, and there would be 60 people running around, cousins I didn't know names of, and all of that good stuff. He was very serious about taking care of his siblings. Norris was the oldest of those 5 children, and he was at times ruthless with high school, playground bullies and people like that were picking on his siblings. He had a reputation for that. It's interesting because after that he became quite the pacifist. But as a young man, if you especially were being mean to his sister, he'd be all over you. And then there was rhubarb. There was a garden outside the farmhouse, a small garden, 1.5 acres. And in the middle of that garden, there was a big rhubarb patch. And there are many stories of my grandmother, after several hours of not seeing her eldest son, would wonder where it was he had gotten to. And they finally figured out that what he was doing was stealing a salt shaker and going out and sitting down in the middle of the rhubarb patch. And he was small enough at the time that nobody could see him. And he would break rhubarb off and eat it with salt on it until he was so sick he had to crawl back to the house. He loved rhubarb to the day he died. Now, he started playing in elementary school band in the 3rd grade. They couldn't figure out exactly what he was going to play, so he messed around with saxophones and oboes and clarinets and percussion instruments and things like that. By the time he graduated high school in 1948, he was already doing a little bit of working on weekends as, at that time, a clarinet player. Trying to decide if he was going to continue on in music as a profession. His senior year of college, or high school, he took Flight of the Bumblebee to contest. Now, I'm guessing that there are a fair number of people in here who played at least in elementary school or through high school, and you know what band contests are all about. I sure do, because I never wanted to do any of them, and I got forced to by him for about 8 years. When he did Flight of the Bumblebee, a contest, the judge pulled him aside and he said, "Norris, you did a pretty good job with that, far better than I would have expected, and you probably deserve a gold medal. But I'm going to give you a silver medal because if I give you a gold and you go to state, they're just going to tear you apart." And he never kind of accepted that very well. And I have a recording, we're not going to play it here, but I have a recording of him several years later after he had woodshed on Flight of the Bumblebee for probably hundreds of hours. And he did it magnificently in that recording. That was the kind of guy that our father was. He had no problem giving himself a goal and working on it for 10 years, right, to make sure that he could get there. He played 4 years in the Air Force Band, basically right out of high school. And then he went to school, university. He decided to go into music professionally. He was going to get a music degree at IU. No wimpy music school there. Pretty good program. And by years later than this, he got me playing. Actually got us both started playing. By the time I was a junior in high school, I was a working trumpet player on the weekends as well, and I'd finally gotten to the point where I realized my dad was a heck of a player. I'd come home, there'd be bands in the living room rehearsing, all kinds of things. And my junior year, I pulled him aside once and I said, Dad, why is it that you did not go into music full time, professionally? And he looked at me and he said, well, my third year at IU, I took my first music business class. And by the time I got to the end of music business class, I decided that I really wanted to eat regularly, so I switched to engineering. When he switched to engineering, he went to Clemson, North Carolina, got himself a bachelor's degree. And then, a lot of people didn't know this because he didn't talk about this up here. He got a PhD in materials sciences with a specialty in friction from Notre Dame University. Now, he was working at Bendix, right? And he was making a lot of waves at Bendix. In the mid-60s, while he was working there, this was just prior to him being awarded his PhD, Bendix got a call from Boeing Corporation, a little bitty company called Boeing. And they said that they had this secret project. Now, he didn't talk about this for years after. Nobody talked about this. They had this secret project, and all of the available technologies were failing. He held many patents, invented a variety of new technologies to solve the problem of stopping 747s. No existing brake technology worked. My father invented an array of new technologies, put them out there. They're still in use today. Every time a 747 stops, that's our father's work. Now, music. Some people also here are unaware that he was the principal clarinetist in the South Bend, Indiana Symphony for at least 8 years. It might have gone on longer than that. We remember getting drug off to the concert hall as kids, having to watch these things. Little Roger and the Dixieland Giants. We'd come home from school, junior high school and high school, and walk in, and there'd be a 4-piece Dixieland band rehearsing in the living room. It was great. It's one of the reasons I wanted to play, actually, and continue to play. We had to go to family recitals. We had to do Christmas concerts with our nieces and our nephews. Music was in everything that our father did from this point forward in his life. It was always front of mind for him. And leading in, when I was in high school, his big bands, his swing bands that he played in, he got me on to be second or third or fourth or 17th call trumpet in some of these bands. And I remember his approach in education and in supporting music for young people, because I benefited from it. He retired in '87, moved to Anacortes, joined the W.T. Preston Heart of Ground Jazz Band sometime after that. And I'd just like to say here, R.I.P. Ben Root. Tear up a little bit. I was a trumpet player at the time. Ben, of course, was a trumpet player. And we had quite a connection there through this music. Of course, Jerry Jones combos. There's people here who played with Jerry. Skagit Swings. There are probably more we don't even know about that he didn't even talk to us about. He volunteered here very much in the last 15 years or so of his life. People don't know, some people know this, but a lot don't. He purchased used instruments off of eBay for $5 or $10, clarinets that were non-functional. He had a little workshop at home. He would tear them down, work on them, get them going, and then offer them to less privileged children who didn't have the money to buy their own clarinets. I don't know how many. I know there are at least 20 of those that he did over his years. Many years on the Manieri Jazz Committee here the early planning work when the bequeathal was first made to the library. Many folks in here I know are far more familiar with that work even than we are. And he spent 20 years working on an evolution of the clarinet research project that he did, which some of you are aware of. These instruments, and I would like to just note, some of you got the email, I know not everybody in here. There is a metal aluminum gun case about this long, that tall, about this deep, that has this collection in it, and we cannot find it.
I have it.
You have it, sir. Thank you. Thank you. It was my father's.
Under arrest.
Peter, if we could talk after for a minute, I'd appreciate it.
We know it was loaned to you, Peter.
Yeah. It was my father's wish that this collection eventually end up either at a museum or here at the library, if an appropriate way to do that can be put together. So we'll have that chat, and thank you so much. That actually makes our day. I miss my father greatly. He was a wonderful man, as many of you know. He played for 80 years, and he's the reason that I play music. Thank you for being here, and thank you all for loving my father the way that he loved you. He spoke so highly of so many. Thank you. My brother would like to say some things.
Well, my brother's a public speaker and I'm not, but it's very important for me to come up here and on a very personal note, thank everyone in Anacortes for everything that they did for my father. He loved it here, and so did my mother. And even the outpouring when he passed away was tremendous. Even the woman I hired, I had no idea, the woman I hired to clean the house out, her kids had been tutored in the public school system by my father. So my father went away very peacefully in his sleep in the house that he wanted to be in. And for that, I'll always be grateful, and always be grateful to Anacortes. Thank you.
There is now a set of slides with a W.T. Preston Heart of Ground Jazz Band tune behind them that I would like to put up to let run while the band is getting set up and ready to play. So thank you all very much again for being the community that our parents loved so much.
What is it?
As I'm having problems with this, I shouldn't tell you that I have bachelor's and master's degrees in computer science. Yeah, exactly, right? Let's try this again. And the question is, where's the audio? There we go. Thank you again, everybody. I don't want to take any more time, so please, band, go ahead and start getting ready here. Do what you need to do. Oh yeah, let's get it. Does it roll? It does look like much.
places. He had some issues with arthritis as he got older and kept fighting them and still playing. I spent a lot of time taking care of his wife when she got older too. She had some health issues, but he was just a sweetie pie. I didn't see who it was, so I don't know. Yeah. People don't spend enough time with music. People talk to me about their kids or their grandkids and how they're good football players. Like, well, what instrument do you play? Oh, I'm sorry. Well, I think it's interesting because the things that you learn musically and the things that you use even in sports and other types of learning, I mean, they're all in your cerebral cortex. My one daughter, when she was like 9 or 10, was studying guitar and voice and learning how to do fast pitch softball. And I could literally watch when she picked up one thing in one of those, it would carry over to the others. Yeah, exactly. So many people with different types of music I know that it's, it just, it's amazing. For something now that he's retired, he's actually a professional player and makes everything from mandolins to strange, he had a guy from California commission a super exotic Japanese
That is him at the annual
He'd get plans. He had to get a picture off the internet and create the plans himself. Listen to what it was supposed to sound like and so on and so forth. Oh, it's made out of wood, but I mean it's a really I forget how many. It has a like a almost a triangular shape map, and then it just very unique. Yeah, I know. What's his name? I know the one kid who now is going to, well, maybe Western, I'm not sure, but it seems to change colleges. Must be 19.
Now for something completely different.
Right, so, good afternoon. We'd like to begin by saying thank you very much to the Nary Endowment for providing this opportunity for us to share our love of jazz with you. And before we knew this was going to go on, we had, as a collective, had decided that we were going to dedicate this concert to Norris. So, that being said, our first tune this evening, is a jazz composition that was a standard composed by Miles Davis and Gil Evans for the 1957 album Birth of the Cool, which compiled 11 tracks recorded by Davis's 9-piece group for Capitol Records over the course of 3 sessions during 49 to 50. This is one of my favorite Miles Davis tunes, and it's called Listen.
By the way, you are attending the Jazz Second Sunday sponsored by the Dominic Maneri Endowment for Jazz and Swing Education, sponsored by the Anacortes Public Library and the Dominic Maneri Endowment. This event is free, and it happens every second Sunday of the month between now and who knows how long. I think we're into our 5th or 6th year.
Oh, I think it's supposed to be 10.
Okay, well, yeah, I guess I answered those things. So thank the Anacortes Public Library and the Maneri Endowment for sponsoring these educational and free jazz events. So on the sheet.
Right there, so it's good. Very handy.
Thank you.
Ready?
Yep.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Just for a little background, we're kind of a band that was put together for the Arts Festival 3 years ago, and then last year we did it again. That's how come it's the Festival Horns. It's the same group that played then. And this is the trio, Timmy Three, of Andy Carr, John Anderson, and myself, Tim Esley. And then in the front line, we have on the far end there on tenor, Kenton Kusala. Hey. On flugelhorn, Jerry Finwick. Yay! On alto and other things, Barry. Vince DeJaren. On violin, Mr. Keith Stone. Our next composition is a Freddie Hubbard piece. Freddie Hubbard was a violent trumpet player. And many really cool songs that we won't get into right now. But anyway, this one is was released in 1972. And it was arranged by Dwayne